Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I would like to start by thanking the symposium sponsors for contribution to the success of this event. I would also like to start by thanking the ID Advisory Board for their priceless contribution to our program. I'm so pleased to introduce Ms. Audrey Koehn and Ms. Stephanie Williams, who are going to be the speakers for us today. So as our discussion goes, feel free to put any questions you might have in the chat box, or also feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions at the same time. So that's totally okay. Today, our speakers are going to be presenting what is the cookie made of, healthy material choices you could eat. So we're looking forward to the interesting presentation.
Well, thank you so much for having us. It's great to see everybody today. As we get started, I'm going to ask Stephanie to share her screen. I'm going to let her drive. And hopefully you've eaten lunch because we're going to talk about food for a little bit. So sorry if you haven't and this makes your stomach growl. But what we wanted to do was start out with a little bit of an icebreaker. And so we want to know, what is your favorite cookie? So tell us in the chat, jump in. We want to make sure you also know how to use your chat when we get to the questions. So we want to hear from you. I'll tell you now that mine's probably chocolate chip. Yes. Ooh, pumpkin spice.
Ooh, that sounds delicious.
It does.
Now I'm hungry.
I know.
Oh, these are great. If we have a winner though, chocolate chip is crowd favorite.
Crowd favorite for sure.
Yes.
There's the white chocolate macadamia. I could get behind that one too. Christina, I'm with you. So the reason we're kind of talking about cookies is we want to put a little bit of an analogy in front of you today in regards to understanding, what goes into a cookie. Let's talk about that. So I'm glad there's a lot of chocolate chip lovers because that's our example today. But, there's lots of various ingredients, right? So you've got that you have to have chocolate chips in a chocolate chip cookie, but also there's flour, sugar, all of the different ingredients that make up this cookie. And so we're like, why are we talking about this? Well, let's think about where do some of these ingredients actually come from? And so when we start looking at, the flour, the salt, even, if you choose walnuts in your cookie, things like that, they come from all over the world, right? They're not just ingredients that are harvested in our backyards or processed and things like that. So we have to really start understanding, we can go get it from the grocery store, but where does the grocery store get it from? And where does that producer for that grocery store chain get it from? And so there's a lot that goes into it that we don't necessarily always think about. And so this is something that from a cookie perspective, I was like, I love that my chocolate, comes from South America because it's probably better than anything we could grow here. So, but at the same time, what's the cost impact of that on our environment and on our cookie for that matter? The other piece that we want to talk about is, okay, so how does this affect you as an individual? I mean, I love myself a cookie, and I'll tell you right now, I would never eat just one. So when you start thinking about what's in it, okay, so how does the sugar affect your body? How does the, intake of too much sugar, of excess sugar affect your thought process, the sugar high? I know I don't give my kids or, too much sugar before they go to bed because it has an effect, right? It has an actual impact on our body and on our thought process and just how excited we get about, staying up late. But I think the other piece of it is also starting to think about what makes you feel good. How do you, how do you show up as your best self? Well, if you have any kind of allergy, maybe there's a gluten allergy, a nut allergy, dairy, eggs, any of those things, if you ate this, that would affect you. And so I think when you start looking at the various ingredients in different foods that you eat, that, you have to be aware of how it affects your body. And so that's not any different in regards to, okay, maybe you eat just one cookie because you have to balance it with all the other healthy things that your body actually needs to function and think and, be effective. And, diets are not my favorite thing ever. I have this sweet tooth of a 5-year-old, and I'll admit it, but I do have to go, okay, if I'm going to eat 2 cookies, like I need to make sure that I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, you can eat dinner. If you eat dinner, if you have your, proteins and vegetables and everything else, then you can have a cookie, because we have to balance it, right? It's no different than what that means for our environment and for the spaces that we live in. So the big picture of this is really more about what you put in your body and being very conscious of what that looks like and what is actually in those different products. Because even though we may not be eating the environment around us, that doesn't mean that it's not somehow getting into our systems. And so we have to be very conscious about what ingredients go into those products. And so the one last thing is I love this statement. We are where we live as much as we are what we eat. So if you eat way too many cookies, there are implications to that. And so I think as much as we have to really think about what the environment we put ourselves in really does affect how we live our lives and our ability to live our lives. So with that, I am going to let Stephanie dig into the details of some of the various ways we look at our products as we design space at DLR Group.
Thank you, Audrey. Yes, so as Audrey mentioned, we're so conditioned really to be looking at ingredient labels on food now, because there's allergies, there's health benefits, there's harmful effects of eating certain foods. So why aren't we doing that for the products that we're putting into our spaces as well? Why aren't we looking at ingredients labels for the products of solid surfaces or fabrics, or are we making sure the wood is formaldehyde free? Knowing what goes into these things really can have a grave effect on how it affects occupants. So we know that formaldehyde can cause asthma symptoms. It can also cause skin irritations. And we also know with humidity increasing by 35%, that formaldehyde emissions also increases by 1.8 to 2.6. So understanding the environments and how they're affecting our products, and then ultimately how they affect us, is extremely important. And that's what we'll dive into. So really what an ingredients label is called for material is that health product declaration. It's such a wonderful tool that was developed to really help designers have a quick glance at what is in a product. The declare label you see here in the middle and the HPD on the right are all for this carpet product on the left. And it's a great snapshot to understand. I mean, right off the bat, we can tell that this carpet does not have any red list chemicals in it. If you want to dive into the deeper aspect of it, the HPD really dives into what all the chemicals are. It also lists what are the side effects, or what are they known to cause if they are harmful. And so these snapshot or health ingredients for products have become extremely helpful and useful for us designers to design spaces that are healthy for our occupants. And why that really matters is because, as we're finding out, a lot of these chemicals and exposure to these chemicals are causing asthma, obesity, diabetes, some cancer, neurological development conditions, and heart disease. And it's the ethical thing for us to do as designers, not only to create safe spaces per building code, but also to create healthy spaces and safe spaces for the people that will be occupying the buildings that we're designing or the homes that we're designing. And so it's our job to really make sure that we know what we're specifying, so that we are not continuing this process of putting these harmful chemicals into our spaces. So, are you convinced yet? I feel like, that might have been a little bit of a scare tactic, hear all the bad things. It's really also not hard to do. So how you can help as a designer is, let's start with the basics. We have the HPDs and declare labels. That's what's going to help us. But I know when I first started out, I didn't even know what to look for on those. There's so many chemicals in this world. And and it can be overwhelming. And so we wanted to simplify that down really. So starting with the six chemicals of concern and avoiding their uses. I think these six that we're about to introduce is a great introductory to understanding how chemicals affect the body and also have another effect on the planet as well, because ultimately a lot of these products, if they don't have a reuse or if they're not decomposable, they will end up in landfills. And so we also have to understand how those chemicals also affect our planet as well. So the first three that I want to introduce are PFASs. Typically where you find those is in carpets, adhesives, and cleaning products. And these chemicals are really known to be linked to different types of cancers. They decrease fertility, decrease immunity response to vaccines in children. I feel like this is pretty prevalent right now living through the pandemic we're in. And they don't break down in the environment. So not only is this affecting us currently in the spaces we're occupying, but then after its life, it's just going to go into the planet or into our landfills and not break down, which is also extremely dangerous and causes harm to other species, other animals. The next one is antimicrobials. These are really found in countertops, flooring, paints. You can also find them sometimes on surfaces of handles. Big push for this because you think, it's antimicrobial, it's going to be killing germs. But what we didn't understand when they first came out is this is actually causing it's a hormone disruptor. It's there's allergy sensitivities to it. It creates antibiotic resistance. And then it's also toxic to wildlife contaminants. So I feel like with a lot of these chemicals, they create a wonderful quick fix, just like we've seen with other products that have been manufactured in the world, the plastic boom too, like, oh, this is wonderful. This is a wonderful product to solve a small problem or make a convenience. But without understanding really where these chemicals can affect the human occupant and even the environment, it can be very scary. And knowing these, and as a designer, knowing what these things can do to people and educating yourself will only make you a better designer to communicate with your clients and make sure that they are also aware of it. The next one is flame retardants. That sounds brilliant, right? We don't want fires. There's so many codes around that. But if you use flame retardants, normally found in furniture, foams, textiles, and wire sheathing, they are actually linked to lowering IQ and hyperactivity in children. Certain types of cancers are linked to flame retardants. Again, hormone disruption, pollution, and so on down and up the food chain of how that can be affected and leach out into the ground when it goes into a landfill. All of these chemicals I'm introducing, you can find more information on them at www.sixclasses.org. So the link is on this slide. Really great resource to learn about these chemicals. The next three, and yeah, this is I always have trouble with these ones. Biphenyls and I can't even place. Oh, they just like tongue twisters. I could never be a doctor with some of the chemical words and procedures. But okay, so these are found in fluorescent lights. Luckily, we don't use fluorescent lights too much, but they're in fluorescent lights, pressure treated wood, decorative paints, and some recycled vinyl products. They are bad because the developmental brain delays, they cause lung and kidney damage, and they also don't break down in the environment. Some solvents is the fifth one. These are found in oil-based paint, sealants, and cleaning products. They are known to be bad for the nervous system. They have issues there, increased cancer risk, and underground contamination. So that's actually really dangerous for once it gets into landfills, the leaching into the water tables and whatever is downstream of that can be pretty bad. And then also it's present in smog. And then next, certain metals. Certain metals are really found in epoxy adhesives, caulks, plastic containers. These are bad because they do cause asthma, anxiety, depression, cognitive and behavioral problems, hormone distribution, and in both human and wildlife. So all 6 of these chemicals here are a really great start for us designers to just keep on the forefront of our minds and really start thinking about, as you're looking at a declare label or if you're looking at an HPD, to really understand how this could be bad. And do you feel okay with specifying products that could potentially create asthma effects, skin irritations, that kind of thing? I think that the ethical thing for us to do is really voice our concerns for these chemicals in the products and to our clients as well, so that they understand the risk too. And so really what this comes down to is without knowing HPD's declare labels, any of that, you can't just look at a product and be able to tell if there's formaldehyde or flame retardants in it, or vinyl might be easier to tell because you can physically see that and feel it. But a lot of this, you as a designer have to do the research for and have to ask the questions and demand the paperwork from our reps, our manufacturers, to show us exactly what is going into this product. If I'm going to be sitting in a chair all day, I want to know that this, and with plastics and fabrics, I want to know that this is healthy to be around. If you're designing homes and you want to help the client with bedding or a mattress and informing them of the different things that can actually go into that, if you're going to sleep on that day after day, you want to make sure you're going to feel great waking up in the morning, not have this droggy effect. And that could be because of what you're sitting on or sleeping on every day. And so really, it's can you even tell which chair here is the more healthy version, has a declare, has an HPD? And the answer is it's really hard to tell unless you do the research. So,
any guesses on which one's the healthier one? Sorry, I'm seeing arrows, and I don't know if you're right or left, sir. Right
I know. I'm seeing a left response.
I think it's we said we weren't going to eat our environments when we were talking about cookies, but I think there's something very, real about the ability to, let a kid touch it, or, be involved, sitting on this chair and picking up a cookie or something that actually, touched and fell on it, and knowing that it's okay. That's our responsibility. And to Stephanie's point, like, our clients don't know what they don't know, and they're trusting that we're helping inform them. And so we have to be the ones that have this voice on their behalf. And with our manufacturers, when you start getting engaged with manufacturers, you have the buying power. You have the ability to tell them, these are the things that are really important, and here's why. And the more, as our design community comes around those conversations, the more impact we have in their ability to change the trajectory of the products that they're developing because of demand. So that's how our role as designers really does start influencing the overall. And and it starts small. It's overwhelming what's out there. And that's, I think, Stephanie's points of these top 6. Start there and just make sure that we're eliminating those things the best we can across the board. So we're balancing our diet as we go through this. So,
and I have to say, it's super exciting from when HPDs first came out and when this really started becoming a heavy topic, but manufacturers are jumping on board too. I'm seeing so many more products with HPDs, and they're ready to answer those questions. So that just makes myself as a designer, it makes my job a lot easier. And so, those documents are already out there for me to research and to look up. Whereas before you might have had to really bug them and dig in and find them. So the good news is there is a lot more product on the market that's starting to have HPDs and EPDs. And declare labels and be a little bit more transparent with what they're made out of, but it's still our job to know how to sift through some of that and make sure that those key chemicals are being avoided. So that's where that first 6, I think, is going to be extremely helpful. And then here we wanted to also showcase, again, you can't see chemicals. So looking at this rendering and understanding that everything in this project went through a huge vetting process to make sure that there were none of the 6 chemicals make sure everything actually was on the red list. And that includes furniture and the permanent installations of finishes as well. And then also that really goes hand in hand with this and creates this, holistic approach to just healthy interiors, is knowing strategies also to couple with this in terms of biophilia and biophilic strategies.
Yeah, so I know that I talked with some of you maybe last year about biophilic strategies, and I think there's so many things about this space that you might go, well, I mean, sure, it's pretty, but is it really biophilic? And just because it has plants in it. And I think there's so many areas that biophilia can kind of subconsciously create an environment that that is just comfortable to be in, a place that you're drawn to. And some of it is just the tones and materials that represent nature. Some of it's the textures, the natural aspects of the wood. Even this image behind me, this is a project. This is a project that we have done that had a lot of great biophilic environments, but it's not screaming that, there has to be a tree in it or a plant wall, or but there's lots of like natural light and elements that are representative of our natural environment, even though they're not necessarily verbatim, replicated in the space. And there's ways to be really creative with that still create that environment that is comfortable, inviting, and ties you back to a space that you really want to be in. And so this particular one is another, like Stephanie said, is a great example of how just the materials alone created some of that biophilic environment. The vertical aspects of the paneling, kind of creating a tree forest feel, was part of that concept. Some of the plants, the lighting, and just creating a soft glow, but also just the materials being very natural and textural, creating those environments that are tactile and you want to be in. So.
Yeah, I think the main, seeing the project that Audrey is sitting in front of, and then also the one on the screen, I think a really big difference about when these natural products really started coming out is, right, you can't really tell anymore. It's not, there used to be a time where it's like, oh, that's definitely, a very green, sustainable product. And maybe at one point, it may have had a different price tag. But now the best thing is, you can barely tell. The prices have really become competitive. This picture alone is pointing out that like the paints and coatings all in here are low VOC emissions. The woods here are natural woods without formaldehyde and FSC certified. So knowing that it's coming from a good source. And then the upholstery too is recycled fibers and avoiding harsh plastic chemical coatings. So again, this doesn't have that, it can have a very sophisticated, polished feel to any design and still be healthy and still make all the occupants feel good. And I think since this last year, we've all spent so much time indoors, even more so in our homes. I'm sure you probably started, dabbling with some plants on the desk or daylight coming in, all these things that we want to incorporate in every space that we design just to make us feel better. And now you can rest easy knowing that the chemicals are not making you sick either. And with that,
yeah, we wanted to make sure that we spent enough time talking about things at a high level, but also giving you the opportunity to engage in a dialogue with us, because there's a lot more here that can be uncovered, but we want to make sure that this is relevant to what you all are thinking, questions that you have, projects that you're working on, all that good stuff. So we also have a list of resources that we utilize pretty regularly, links and websites that we'll share with the faculty so that they can all, distribute that, so you have resources to tap into as well. So with that, any questions? Quiet group. Was it interesting?
Everyone wants a cookie, so.
I know, sorry.
Sure, you guys might have a lot of questions if you think of your projects and while you're doing your specifications and selections. I think you might be able to come up with some questions. Okay.
So one that just popped up in the chat In regards to using fire retard or not using fire retardants, how would you make sure the safety issues are addressed? So
That's
I
a
think
great question.
yeah, it is. I think it really depends on the product that we're talking about. There are some naturally inherent fire retardant fabrics, textiles that you can use. And I think that there's other solutions and stuff. Feel free to jump in on any of your experience as well on some of those.
Yeah, the substitute mainly for those type of products are going to be the natural flame retardants, such as wool, example. I know I had a friend looking for a really healthy, sustainable mattress. And the main thing that they had in that product was wool, because it is a natural flame retardant. So you'll see that as a substitute for a fair amount of flame retardant. When flame retardant chemicals are not used, they'll use a natural product for that. Are there any times where flame retardant is required? That really touches on building codes and fire class safeties. So you will need to, for code, you will need to understand flame retardancy in certain areas. But it really comes down to walls and ceiling and what we're putting on those. It does depend on the class of building too.
Steph, I'm letting you do the next one. What are some of the manufacturers that you find that meet all of your requirements time and time again?
Oh my goodness, such a great one. Okay, so some amazing things that are coming out that I go to a lot for carpet. Mohawk has a ton of red list free carpet options. So that is a wonderful place to start if you're looking for a carpet. I don't know if you guys have seen, but Interface has gone above and beyond on their carbon emissions and actually become carbon neutral. And so they have a wonderful story about their line of carpet, of how they're actually now taking carbon out of the environment and making sure they're not putting any more in. So another good one to go off of. What are some other? Those are the ones I'm like super excited about right now. But a lot of products do have HPDs nowadays. It's just a matter of when you find a couple, I highly recommend looking at them side by side and really diving into, okay, do they have the 6 chemicals? Are they red list free or are they red list compliant? Hightower is a wonderful company, actually it's a furniture company. And they have Michaela Shaw there is in charge of their sustainability. And I had a conversation with her once. She goes down all the way to the nuts and bolts of every single furniture piece to make sure that it is certified as red list free. And she's got to do all the tracking. She's got to, it's a long process, but her work is amazing. So if you go to Hightower's website, anything with a green leaf and has the red list free is quite fun to see. Products aren't going to have any chemicals in them.
And I would say furniture is probably one of the hardest products just because of everything that goes into it versus it's just a carpet. That manufacturer can track what's happening with the nylon and the face fibers and the backing. But when you start looking at a chair, you've got casters, you've got steel, you've got connectors, you've got, upholsteries and, meshes. And I mean, it goes on and on and on. And that's just maybe one product versus their whole product line. So finding a manufacturer that is, and working with your manufacturers to ensure that, those types of products have all of the red list components is a challenge. And so they're working on it and they just have a bigger feat than some of the other product lines.
I can answer this next question, or Audrey, you're still going?
Nope, you're good.
The next one is there a specific project you worked on where material transparency has been important to you and or the client? So I primarily work on educational projects ranging from K-12 all the way up to higher ed. And we have a higher ed client who has come to us wanting to pursue Living Building Challenge PEDAL certification. They ultimately did not pick material to be certified in. However, they are keeping track of all products on this project to make sure that they are the best product in terms of health. So no red list chemicals on there, making sure they have a declare EPD, understanding the carbon footprint of a lot of them. And that's been a wonderful project to go and work with the client on, and something that they're also really excited about. On the other side, with a lot of K-12 projects, you know, they may not come to us with like, we have to have this, but as I'm designing those spaces, I know that children are going to be playing and working on the ground. They're really the ones that are touching these products, putting their hands in their mouth, or whatever age group it is. But for me as a designer, without the client coming to me and saying, you know, like, this is what we care about,
You just
I'm
cut
making
out.
sure that,
Oh,
oh,
you're good.
I'm making sure that those products are healthy going in there. So that's where the ethics of like, I don't feel comfortable putting a product in there. And if I can pick one of two that is healthier, I'm going to pick that healthier option, because maybe the client didn't come to me directly, but I can help educate them and then get them excited about how healthy their school is for the students that go there. So yeah, I just love it when the clients do like to talk about that.
And Brett, I would also add, the last image that we showed is a client that is very interested. I mean, we've done so much research on behalf of working with them that we are starting to implement that, and a lot of what Stephanie's talking about as well, and multiple aspects of how we do our job. I know there's another question a little bit lower that kind of ties right into this, so I'll just answer it now. Even if the client doesn't care about the chemicals in the products, do you still try to use the most environmentally friendly choices? We just signed the AIA's Healthy Materials Pledge for this year. And so we are part of that. We're working on ways to track what our specifications are across the firm, so we can gauge if we're doing a better job or not. It's the whole point, right? Like, is being more conscious, being more aware of what we're putting into our projects and into the environment that our clients are living in. And so we also are working on just updating and cleaning out libraries. So putting kind of some metrics in place that we just aren't going to allow products that we wouldn't specify into our hands to begin with. So we don't even want to be looking at stuff that we shouldn't be specifying. And that's a big hurdle when you start talking about the durability of school flooring. You know, like, there's some legacy products there that are not ideal, and we're trying to like work our way out of some of those things. So there's very much some conscious efforts on our part across our firm that we're working towards getting just more transparency on what we're specifying.
The next question, I can answer this one. How do you prioritize or balance doing thorough research on products when you're working on a fast-paced product and might not have billable hours allocated? That's a wonderful question. We all are wishing that there were more hours of the day sometimes. I would say that luckily there's a lot of tools that have started to come out that are so helpful. So Mindful Materials, another one. Asking right off the bat, what I like to do is, if I'm considering a product, or if I'm asking reps for help to, you know, send me products that fit these criteria matrix, or look, you know, send them a concept and have them send me things, I'm also making sure that they're not sending me anything that doesn't have an HPD. And that right there will start weeding out a lot of products that don't qualify. Another wonderful thing is the internal network that we're starting to create within DLR Group of, you know, knowing who has specified or worked on projects that have a lot to do with material health, and just having that dialogue. So we have an internal chat where it's like, hey, has anyone specified X, Y, and Z product that you found to be extremely helpful, or also still durable, and, you know, at a good price point? We can start working through our network internally to pick those out. And then the more and more times you work on a product or a project where you're starting to think you're thinking about this, it inherently gets a little bit easier each time. But it does require a lot of research. So there's a lot of that, you know, using the resources out there that you can find, and really also trying to get your reps educated, and then also to help you. Could you please repeat what was the website where we can find materials and chemicals that should be avoided? Yes, I'm going to go up to that slide. Trying right here in the bottom, sixclasses.org. Really great resource to understand more about the chemicals. Thank you,
And
Audrey, for
we'll,
also listening.
yeah, we'll send out kind of our list to Habitella, and so she can help distribute it to everybody that was on this call. Because I know somebody else asked for it in here too. So
yeah, thank you so much. That would be great.
yeah.
And this one was the healthier one. I don't know if he answered that. I think I saw it in the chat, but the left side was.